It was Christmas Eve in Scarsdale, the mansion glowing with golden lights, the dining room set with my mother's precious crystal. 25 elegantly dressed guests, my sister's business friends, investors, and important connections, sat waiting for a feast that had been promised for weeks. But when the kitchen doors opened, there was no turkey, no salmon, no souffle, only silence and the awkward hum of whispers spreading across the room. My mother's smirk, so confident hours before when she bragged that my elder daughter will handle all the cooking, she's useful at least, slowly drained into a shade of pale disbelief, because I wasn't there. The ovens were cold, the dishes were empty, and my absence was about to expose everything they'd worked so hard to hide. At that exact moment, a powerful guest, Catherine Morgan, one of the most respected CEOs in New York, leaned toward my mother and asked, "Wait, isn't your older daughter Emily Parker the same Emily who owns the events company I just signed a contract with?" The room went silent. My mother's proud mask cracked in front of everyone. She had no idea her servant daughter was, in fact, the woman Catherine Morgan, called boss. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in the sprawling Parker estate in Scarsdale, a town where wealth wasn't just measured in dollars, but in appearances. Our house stood tall among perfectly manicured lawns, a monument to success with its white columns and black shutters that my mother polished obsessively. Inside those walls, I learned early what my role was. There's a photo in our living room that tells the whole story without a single word. It's a family portrait taken when I was 12 and Olivia was 8. My parents stand centered, my father Thomas's hand resting proudly on Olivia's shoulder. My mother Patricia beams down at her golden child, while I stand slightly apart, my navy dress a stark contrast to Olivia's. Pink frills. Nobody touches me in that photo. Nobody looks at me. "Emily, stand up straight!" My mother had hissed just before the camera clicked. "And for God's sake, try to look presentable for once." That was the narrative of my childhood. Olivia was born to be seen. I was born to serve. By 16, I was preparing entire dinner parties while my mother presented them as her own creations. "Oh, this?" "Just something I whipped up," she'd say, as I watched from the kitchen doorway, my hands raw from hours of chopping and stirring. No one ever questioned why Patricia Parker, who couldn't boil water without burning it, suddenly produced 5-star meals. When I graduated high school with honors, my parents threw a party for Olivia's acceptance into a summer program. When I got into Cornell's hotel school, fully on merit, not on the donations my father made for Olivia's admission to NYU, my mother sighed and said, "Well, I suppose someone has to know how to manage the help." College was my first taste of freedom. For 4 years, I lived in a world where people knew my name, where professors praised my event management projects, where classmates wanted to partner with me. I graduated summa cum laude, but my parents skipped the ceremony. Olivia had a modeling shoot that day, just some local magazine's summer spread. But according to Patricia, these opportunities don't come twice. I moved to Brooklyn after graduation, into a small apartment that felt palatial simply because it was mine. I started at the bottom of the event planning industry, fetching coffee, arranging chairs, staying until midnight to ensure every detail was perfect. But unlike at home, my work was noticed. I climbed quickly. "You have an eye, Emily," my first boss had said. "You see what others miss." Perhaps that was the gift of being invisible for so long. I noticed everything. By 28, I had enough clients and savings to launch Aurora Events. My tiny one-bedroom loft became my office, my sample room, my dream factory. I worked 18-hour days building something that was solely mine. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's neglect had fostered the very independence that now fueled my success. Still, every Sunday, I dutifully drove to Scarsdale for family dinner. I'd arrive early to help my mother in the kitchen while Olivia lounged in the living room, showing my father her latest photo shoots or PR campaigns. "Emily, the potatoes are lumpy," my mother would snap, tasting my mashed potatoes without a thank you. "Emily, you're 32 now. Don't you think it's time to find a real career? Or at least a husband?" my father would ask over dessert, as if running my own company was a hobby to fill time until I found my purpose. "I have a career, Dad," I'd answer quietly. "Oh, still that little party planning thing? How quaint," my mother would interject, never looking up from her plate. I stopped correcting them years ago, stopped mentioning the celebrity weddings I coordinated, the corporate galas I designed, the waiting list of clients willing to pay premium prices for Aurora Events' signature touch. What was the point? In their eyes, I would always be just Emily, useful but unremarkable. Then came the contract with Morgan Enterprises. Catherine Morgan, a self-made billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, wanted Aurora Events to handle all her company's functions for the next 3 years. The contract was worth millions. More importantly, it was validation. Proof that someone with Catherine's discernment saw value in what I had created. The meeting was scheduled for December 26th in Florida, where Catherine was spending the holidays. I booked my first-class ticket, packed my best suit, and prepared my presentation with meticulous care. This wasn't just another client. This was the culmination of everything I'd worked for. The day before Christmas Eve, as I was finalizing my preparations, my phone rang. Patricia Parker's name flashed on the screen. "Emily," my mother's voice carried its usual tone of command. "Cancel whatever insignificant plans you have. Olivia is hosting 25 important friends tomorrow evening. Executives, investors. You'll cook everything. 7 courses, 10 sides. Be here at noon." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of obligation settling on my shoulders. "Mom, I have an important business trip the day after Christmas. I've had it planned for months." Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. "A business trip? For what? To buy paper plates? This is important, Emily. Olivia needs to impress these people." "I can't, Mom. Not this time." "Don't be ridiculous. You're good for something, at least. Be here at noon." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, then at the plane ticket on my counter. For a moment, I saw myself doing what I always did, canceling my plans, showing up at the mansion, cooking for hours while Olivia basked in compliments for a meal she'd never even seen prepared. Instead, I packed my suitcase. For once in my life, I chose myself. The morning of Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, sunlight sparkling on fresh snow outside my Brooklyn loft. I stood by the window, phone in hand, thumb hovering over my mother's number. My suitcase was packed and waiting by the door. The rational part of me said I should call, explain again why I couldn't be their personal chef today. But 32 years of experience told me it wouldn't matter what I said. I put the phone down without calling. For once, let them wonder where I was. As I moved around my apartment, gathering last-minute items for my trip, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I paused, really looking at myself. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, eyes that people often described as intense, a face that had grown confident without becoming hard. I'd built something real here, something that mattered. Why couldn't they see that? My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Where are you?" Mom's freaking out. It was already noon. In the Parker family timeline, I was officially late. Another buzz. "Emily, this is serious. These people are important." I set the phone down again. Let them panic for once. At 2 p.m., my father called. I watched his name flash on the screen, a rare enough occurrence that for a moment I almost answered. Thomas Parker rarely involved himself in family disputes, preferring to let Patricia manage the domestic issues while he handled the finances and public appearances. If he was calling, the situation had escalated. "Emily." His voicemail was curt, businesslike. "Your mother tells me you've decided not to help with Olivia's dinner. I don't know what kind of statement you're trying to make, but this is extremely disappointing. These guests include people who could advance Olivia's career significantly. Call your mother immediately." No mention of my career. No recognition that I might have legitimate commitments of my own. Just disappointment that I wasn't fulfilling my designated role in the Parker family hierarchy. By 4 p.m., the calls had become frantic. My mother's voice tight with controlled rage. "Emily Elizabeth Parker, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to get to this house now. The guests arrive at 7 and nothing is prepared. Nothing. Do you understand what you're doing to this family?" Yes, I thought. For the first time, I actually do. At 5 p.m., I wheeled my suitcase out the door and locked my apartment behind me. The Uber to JFK was waiting. As we pulled away from the curb, I turned my phone off completely. I imagine what happened next at the Parker estate. My mother, realizing I truly wasn't coming, would have cycled through rage, disbelief, and finally, panic. Patricia Parker, Queen of Scarsdale Society, facing the prospect of 25 important guests arriving to, what? Delivery pizza? Empty plates? The thought should have filled me with guilt. Instead, I felt a strange, unfamiliar lightness. At the airport, surrounded by holiday travelers rushing to reunite with loved ones, I sat alone at the gate, oddly peaceful. Tomorrow, I would meet Catherine Morgan. Tomorrow, I would sign the contract that would take Aurora events to a new level. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I was choosing my own path. I turned my phone back on briefly before boarding. 17 missed calls, 29 text messages, most from my mother, growing increasingly desperate. A few from Olivia, transitioning from annoyed to panicked. None from my father after that single voicemail. The last text from my mother read simply, "You've ruined everything." I boarded the plane to Florida, feeling like I could finally breathe. The flight attendant greeted me with a warm smile as I settled into my first-class seat. "Heading home for Christmas?" "No," I said, surprising myself with how good it felt. "I'm heading to a business meeting that could change everything." She nodded approvingly. "Good for you. Champagne before takeoff?" As the plane lifted into the darkening sky, I sipped my champagne and watched the lights of New York City fade below. I thought of the mansion in Scarsdale, imagined the frantic scene playing out there. 25 guests arriving in their holiday finery, expecting a lavish meal. My mother greeting them with her practiced smile, perhaps already creating some excuse for the delay. Olivia, unused to actual crisis, not knowing what role to play. And somewhere in that crowd, Catherine Morgan, the CEO I was scheduled to meet tomorrow, unwittingly walking into the chaos I'd created simply by not being where I was always expected to be. I hadn't known Catherine would be there, of course. That twist of fate was just the universe's way of making a point. But as the plane leveled off and the fasten seatbelt sign dimmed, I felt a flutter of anticipation at the thought of our meeting tomorrow. What would she think when she realized? The woman she was about to sign a multi-million-dollar contract with was the same useless daughter Patricia Parker had dismissed for years. I settled back in my seat, closed my eyes, and for the first time in my adult life, slept without setting an alarm to wake early and serve others. The Florida air hit me like a warm embrace when I deplaned at Miami International. Palm trees swayed against a star-filled sky, so different from the snowy landscape I'd left behind. My hotel, a sleek boutique property near the water, welcomed me with quiet luxury, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, much like Aurora events. In my room, I finally turned my phone back on, bracing myself for the onslaught. But there were only 3 new messages. One from my assistant confirming tomorrow's meeting. Details. One from an unknown number that turned out to be Catherine Morgan's executive secretary, also confirming our appointment. And one from Olivia, sent just an hour ago. "I don't know what happened to you, but you won't believe who's here. Catherine Morgan, the Catherine Morgan. And she asked about you. By name." "What the hell is going on, Emily?" I smiled at the phone, then set it aside, without responding. Tomorrow would bring its own revelations. Tonight, I wanted to enjoy this moment of perfect, hard-earned freedom. I stepped onto my room's balcony, breathing in the salt air. Below me, the hotel pool glowed turquoise in the darkness, its surface rippling gently. Across the bay, Miami sparkled with Christmas lights and possibility. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was simply waiting to be seen. Miami's December sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden light across the conference room of the Morgan Enterprises headquarters. I adjusted my blazer, deep blue, tailored, a far cry from the practical, invisible clothes I wore at family gatherings, and checked my presentation materials one last time. In 15 minutes, I would meet Catherine Morgan. My phone buzzed. Another text from Olivia. "Emily, what the hell is going on? Mom is furious. Dad won't even speak. Catherine Morgan knew your name. Your name. Call me back now." I silenced the phone and slipped it into my bag. Whatever chaos was unfolding in Scarsdale would have to wait. "Ms. Parker?" A polished assistant appeared at the door. "Ms. Morgan is ready for you." The walk to Catherine's office felt like floating. This moment, this was what I'd built Aurora events for. Not for validation from my family, but for this. Recognition from people who understood value when they saw it. Catherine Morgan rose from behind a sleek desk as I entered. Tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and keen eyes that missed nothing, she extended her hand. "Emily Parker, finally we meet in person." Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. She gestured for me to take a seat across from her. "I must say, yesterday's dinner party was quite memorable, though not in the ways your family might have hoped." My stomach tightened. "Ms. Morgan, I apologize if—" She waved away my words. "Please, no apologies necessary. In fact, it was illuminating." Her eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "Your mother seemed quite shocked when I mentioned knowing you professionally." I swallowed. "We don't discuss my business much at home." Evidently not. Catherine settled back in her chair, studying me. The Parker estate was in complete disarray. No dinner. Olivia in tears. Your mother attempting to explain that her help hadn't shown up. She leaned forward. Imagine my surprise when I realized the help they were referring to was the same Emily Parker whose event planning company has become the talk of New York's corporate elite. Heat crept up my neck. It's complicated. Family always is. Catherine's voice softened slightly. But business doesn't have to be. I've reviewed your proposal thoroughly. Your attention to detail is exceptional. The Morgan Enterprises holiday gala you organized last month was flawless. Exactly the kind of precision we're looking for in a long-term partner. I released the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you. I'm prepared to sign the contract today. She slid a folder across the desk. 3 years. Exclusive rights to all Morgan Enterprises events, with the budget we discussed. My hand, trembled slightly as I reached for the folder. Inside was everything I'd worked for. Validation, security, prestige. The kind of contract that would cement Aurora Events as a major player. There's just one condition. Catherine added, her gaze steady. I tensed. Yes? I want you to tell me why a woman capable of building such an impressive company allows herself to be treated as household staff by her own family. The question hit like a physical blow. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. I don't mean to pry, she continued, her tone gentle but firm. But I make it a point to know who I'm doing business with. Character matters to me, Emily. And while your professional reputation is impeccable, yesterday revealed something concerning. I looked down at the contract, then back at Catherine. What exactly are you asking? I'm asking why you hide. Why someone with your obvious talent and drive would allow others to diminish her. It doesn't add up, and I don't partner with puzzles. The room felt suddenly airless. Years of carefully compartmentalizing my life, the successful CEO in Brooklyn, the invisible daughter in Scarsdale, collapsed around me. Catherine Morgan hadn't just seen through the facade. She was demanding I dismantle it entirely. I don't hide professionally, I said finally. Aurora Events has my name on every contract, every design, every invoice. I've never pretended to be less than I am in my business life. Only with your family. I nodded slowly. It was easier that way. They had their narrative about who I was supposed to be. Fighting it seemed pointless. Until yesterday. A small smile tugged at my lips. Until yesterday. Catherine studied me for a long moment, then nodded, as if confirming something to herself. Your choice to prioritize your business meeting over your family's demands took courage. That's the Emily Parker I want to do business with. She pulled a pen from her desk drawer and held it out to me. Sign the contract, Emily. And then perhaps we can discuss the other matter. Other matter? Her smile was enigmatic. The Parker family. I believe they're overdue for a reality check, don't you? I hesitated. I didn't come here for revenge, Ms. Morgan. Not revenge. Recognition. She leaned forward, eyes intent. There's a difference between vindictiveness and simply refusing to be invisible any longer. One diminishes you, the other reclaims your power. As I signed my name on the contract, a bold, clear signature, not the timid scrawl I used on my mother's grocery lists, Catherine's words resonated. I hadn't left Scarsdale to punish my family. I'd left to honor myself. Excellent. Catherine collected the signed documents. Now, about that reality check. I have a proposition. I'm listening. Morgan Enterprises is hosting its New Year's reception in 1 week, the most exclusive event of the season. Politicians, celebrities, business leaders, your family will be there. I raised an eyebrow. My family? Thomas Parker's investment firm has been courting our business for months. Your father and mother are on the guest list. Olivia, too, I believe. Something about her PR firm potentially handling some of our regional campaigns. She smiled. But they don't know that Aurora Events will be running the entire show, or that the Emily Parker they've dismissed for years will be introduced as my company's exclusive event partner. My heart raced at the thought. Not revenge, but recognition. The chance to step fully into the light, to be seen, truly seen, by the people who had worked. Hardest to keep me in the shadows. What do you say, Emily? Ready to stop being invisible? I thought of the empty kitchen in Scarsdale, the frantic calls, the years of dismissal and neglect. Then I thought of my loft in Brooklyn, the company I'd built, the life I'd created despite everything. Yes, I said finally. I think it's time. Catherine's smile was satisfied. Excellent. The reception is, on New Year's Eve at the Pierre. I'll expect your team to begin preparations immediately. She rose, extending her hand. Welcome to the big leagues, Ms. Parker. As I left Morgan Enterprises, the Miami sun warm on my face, my phone began buzzing again. My father this time. Emily. His voice was tight with controlled fury. Your mother is beside herself. 25 guests, including Catherine. Morgan, and no dinner. Do you have any idea of the embarrassment you've caused? For the first time in my life, I interrupted him. Actually, Dad, I just had a meeting with Catherine Morgan. She signed a 3-year contract with Aurora Events. My company. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? My company, Dad. The one I've been running for 4 years. The one that just landed Morgan Enterprises as an exclusive client. The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, he cleared his throat. We'll discuss this when you get home. I won't be coming home for a while, Dad. I have a New Year's Eve event to plan. At the Pierre. For Catherine Morgan. I ended the call before he could respond and stepped into the waiting car, headed back to my hotel. For the first time since leaving New York, I felt the full weight of what I'd done and the lightness of what lay ahead. No longer the invisible daughter, no longer the family servant, just Emily Parker, CEO of Aurora Events, finally visible in her own right. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of planning meetings, vendor calls, and design sessions. I flew back to New York the day after signing with Catherine, diving immediately into preparations for the Morgan Enterprises New Year's reception. My team, 12 talented professionals who had helped build Aurora Events from the ground up, gathered in our Brooklyn office, energized by the magnitude of the opportunity. This is huge, Emily, said Zoe, my creative director and oldest friend. Morgan Enterprises? For 3 years? Do you know how many companies have tried to land that contract? I smiled, scanning the mood board she'd created for the event. I have some idea. And the timing couldn't be more perfect, added Marco, our logistics manager. Starting the new year with the biggest client in our portfolio, it's like the universe is giving us a thumbs up. If only they knew. I hadn't told my team about the family drama behind this contract. How Catherine Morgan had witnessed firsthand the dysfunction of the Parker household. How she'd essentially offered me the chance to step out of the shadows and into my own light. Some things were still too raw, too personal to share, even with the people I trusted most. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Scarsdale. My mother, alternating between cold fury and tearful manipulation. My father, demanding explanations in his clipped businessman tone. Olivia, oscillating between confusion and accusation. I read them all but responded to none. For once, they could wait. I had a job to do. The morning of New Year's Eve, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Pierre overseeing the transformation. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, catching the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered sweeping views of Central Park. Tables draped in midnight blue silk held centerpieces of white roses and silver branches that seemed to glow from within. A stage had been set for the evening's entertainment. A renowned jazz quartet followed by a surprise performance I'd arranged specially for Catherine. It's stunning, Emily, Catherine said, appearing beside me. She surveyed the room with appreciative eyes. Exactly what I envisioned, but somehow better. Thank you. My team has been working around the clock. She nodded, then gave me a sidelong glance. Have you spoken to your family? Not yet. They've confirmed their attendance, all 3 of them. A knot tightened in my stomach. I assumed they would. Dad's been trying to land Morgan Enterprises as a client for months, and now his daughter has beaten him to it. Catherine's smile was sharp. Life has a wonderful sense of irony sometimes, doesn't it? I didn't answer. Despite everything, the thought of facing my family tonight, of their reaction when they realized who was behind this elegant affair, filled me with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Not triumph exactly. Something more complex. You know, Catherine said, her voice softer now. When I was starting out, my own father told me I'd never amount to anything in business. Women don't have the stomach for it, he said. For years, I sent him newspaper clippings about my successes. I wanted to prove him wrong so badly it consumed me. I turned to look at her, surprised by this personal revelation. And then one day, I realized something, she continued. I wasn't building my company for him anymore. I was building it for me. That's when everything changed. She touched my arm lightly. Don't make tonight about them, Emily. Make it about you. Her words stayed with me as I returned to my loft to prepare for the evening. I stood before my closet, deliberating. For family events, I always chose muted colors, simple styles, clothes designed to blend into the background. Tonight called for something different. The dress I finally selected was a deep, shimmering blue that caught the light as I moved, with an elegant silhouette that emphasized my height. I styled my hair in loose waves rather than my usual practical ponytail, applied makeup that enhanced rather than concealed, chose jewelry that made a statement rather than fading into the background. The woman who gazed back from the mirror looked confident, powerful, visible. I arrived at the Pierre early, checking final details with my team. The ballroom doors would open at 8. It was now 7:30. Guests would begin arriving soon. Everything's perfect, Zoe assured me, squeezing my hand. Go be the boss lady. Mingle. Network. This is your night, Em. I positioned myself near the entrance alongside Catherine, greeting guests as they arrived. New York's elite streamed in. Financial titans, media moguls, political figures, celebrities. Each expressed delight at the setting, complimenting Catherine on the exquisite arrangements. Each time she smiled and introduced me. This is Emily Parker of Aurora Events. She's the genius behind everything you see tonight. The clock ticked toward 9. Still no sign of my family. Perhaps they'd decided not to come after all. Perhaps. Miss Morgan, what a pleasure. My father's voice. I turned slowly. There they stood. Thomas Parker in an impeccable tuxedo. Patricia draped in designer silk, her face a careful mask of social charm. Olivia glittering in gold sequins, her expression faltering as she caught sight of me. Thomas, Patricia. Welcome, Catherine said warmly. And Olivia. How lovely to see you again under better circumstances than Christmas Eve. My mother's smile stiffened. My father's eyes darted between Catherine and me, confusion gradually giving way to realization. You've met my exclusive events partner, of course, Catherine continued smoothly, gesturing toward me. Emily Parker of Aurora Events. She's the creative force behind tonight's reception, and all Morgan Enterprises events for the next 3 years. Silence stretched between us. My father recovered first, his businessman instincts kicking in. Emily, he said, extending his hand formally, as if we were strangers meeting at a networking event. Congratulations on your contract. I took his hand briefly. Thank you, Dad. My mother hadn't moved, her eyes fixed on me as if seeing a ghost. What is this? She finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. This is my work, Mom, I said simply. This is what I do. Olivia stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the opulent room, then returning to me. You planned all this? You run Aurora Events? But that's a real company? I finished for her. Yes, it is. Emily has built one of the most respected event planning firms in New York, Catherine interjected. Her client list is impressive, though Morgan Enterprises is now at the top, of course. She smiled pleasantly. If you'll excuse us, we should continue greeting guests. Please enjoy the evening. She guided me away, leaving my family standing frozen in the entryway. As we moved through the crowd, she leaned close. Round 1 to Emily Parker. How are you feeling? I exhaled slowly, lighter than I expected. Good. That's very good. She nodded toward the approaching mayor. Now let's continue introducing New York to the real Emily Parker. Throughout the evening, I caught glimpses of my family from across the room. My father, speaking intently, with investment partners, his eyes occasionally seeking me out. My mother, unusually subdued, nursing a single glass of champagne in a corner. Olivia, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not quite envy, not quite admiration, something in between. None of them approached me, and strangely, I felt no need to approach them. This space, this world of elegant professionalism, of respected accomplishment, was mine. They were the visitors here, not me. As midnight approached and guests gathered for the countdown, Catherine found me again. A flawless event, she said. You've more than proven your worth tonight, professionally and personally. The room dimmed as the giant crystal ball on the screen began its descent in Times Square. Voices joined in the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Across the room, my father's eyes met mine. For the first time in my memory, I saw something there I'd never seen before. Respect. 7, 6, 5. My mother stood beside him, her face pale, her usual composure fractured. 4, 3, 2. Olivia raised her champagne glass toward me, a small gesture, but unmistakable. 1. Happy New Year. As confetti fell and champagne corks popped as the room erupted in celebration, I stood still in the center of the chaos, feeling something settle inside me. Not victory, Not vindication. Recognition. At last. The first week of January brought a bitter cold to New York, the kind that freezes your breath and makes the city seem suspended in time. I welcomed it. After the whirlwind of the Morgan reception and the emotional complexity of seeing my family, I needed the clarity that only sharp winter air can bring. I was in my office reviewing proposals for Catherine's next major event when my assistant knocked. "Emily, your sister's here to see you." I looked up, surprised. "Olivia? Did she have an appointment?" "No, but she's been waiting in reception for 20 minutes. Says she won't leave until she sees you." Curious and slightly wary, I nodded. "Send her in." Olivia stepped into my office, looking strangely out of place. Gone was the confident PR princess, replaced by someone hesitant, almost apologetic. She wore a simple gray coat over black slacks, more subdued than her usual flashy style. Her eyes widened as she took in the space, the sleek design, the wall of awards, the framed magazine, features about Aurora events, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the Brooklyn skyline. "This is impressive," she said finally. "Thank you. Please, sit." She perched on the edge of a chair, uncharacteristically tense. "Your receptionist asked if I had an appointment? I guess that means you have a staff. 17 people now. We've grown quickly this past year. And this building, this is yours?" "I leased the top floor. The loft is mine, though. Bought it last spring." Olivia nodded slowly, processing this information. Then she looked directly at me. "Why didn't you ever tell us, Emily, about any of this?" I leaned back in my chair, considering my answer carefully. "Would you have been interested?" "Of course, when I graduated from Cornell, I told everyone I'd been accepted into a management training program with EHL events. Dad said it was quaint that I thought party planning was a career. Mom asked why I was wasting my education. You didn't say anything at all." Olivia flinched. "I was 19 and self-absorbed. And they were adults who should have known better," I said, surprising myself with the calmness in my voice. "But that's not really why I didn't tell you. The truth is, after a while, it just became easier not to share my life with any of you. When no one asks real questions about what you do, eventually you stop offering answers." Silence settled between us. Outside, snow had begun to fall, soft flakes swirling against the gray January sky. "Mom's a mess," Olivia said finally. "She hasn't left her room since New Year's. Keeps saying she's humiliated, that everyone in Scarsdale is talking about her. I imagine they are. Dad's," she hesitated, "different. Quiet. He asked his assistant to bring him everything she could find about Aurora events. He's been reading about your company for days." I didn't respond. Their reactions weren't my responsibility. That was the one thing I'd learned over the past 2 weeks. Perhaps the most important lesson of all. Their feelings, their embarrassment, their realizations, none of it was mine to manage. "And how are you, Olivia?" I asked instead. The question seemed to catch her off guard. "Me? I'm confused. Angry, actually." She ran a hand through her hair. "Not at you. At myself. I've been thinking about it constantly. How I never asked about your life. How I just accepted. What Mom and Dad said about you being less somehow." Her voice cracked slightly. "We were horrible to you, weren't we?" There it was, the acknowledgement I'd never expected to hear. Not from Olivia, the golden child, the center of the Parker universe. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to detecting in my family's interactions. I found none, only genuine distress and something that looked remarkably like shame. "It wasn't great," I conceded, softening slightly. "It was worse than not great, Emily. It was cruel." She looked down at her hands. "The way Mom talked to you, the way Dad dismissed you, the way I treated you like the help." She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "At the Morgan reception, when I realized who you really were, what you'd built while we were all belittling you, I've never felt so small. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also an unexpected pang of sympathy. That wasn't my intention. I know. That's what makes it worse." She wiped at her eyes. "You didn't set out to humiliate us. You just succeeded, in spite of us." Outside, the snow fell harder, hushing the city. Inside, years of unspoken truths hung in the air between us. "I don't expect you to forgive us," Olivia continued. "Especially Mom. She's taking it the hardest. Her pride, you know. I know exactly what her pride is like. But I wanted you to know that I see you now, Emily. Really see you. She gestured around the office. All of this, what you've built, it's extraordinary. And I'm sorry it took something so public for me to recognize that. I considered her words, testing them for sincerity. There had been so many false starts with my family over the years, so many moments when I'd thought perhaps things might change, only to be disappointed. But something about Olivia's demeanor felt different. The humility in her posture, the genuine remorse in her eyes. Thank you for, saying that, I said finally. It means something. Olivia nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. Dad, he wants to meet with you. Professionally. Professionally? He says Morgan Enterprises is the biggest client he's been trying to land for Parker Investments. Now that you have an exclusive contract with them, she shrugged. I think he wants to propose some kind of collaboration. I couldn't help but laugh. A short, incredulous sound. Of course he does. You don't have to meet with him. No, I don't. Olivia seemed to understand. She stood, gathering her coat. I should go. Thank you for seeing me. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Emily, I really am proud of what you've accomplished. And I'm sorry I wasn't a better sister along the way. After she left, I stood at the window, watching the snow transform Brooklyn into a white dreamscape. The conversation with Olivia had stirred something in me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first tentative steps toward it. Not for their sake, but for mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Morgan Enterprises' spring gala proposal is ready for review. Lunch to discuss? I smiled, texting back a quick affirmative. This was my life now. Contracts and proposals, creative decisions, and client meetings. A life I'd built carefully, deliberately, despite everything. A life that had nothing to do with the Parkers of Scarsdale and their opinions of me. And yet, as I gathered my things for lunch, I found myself considering Olivia's words about our father wanting to meet. Not because I needed his approval or wanted his business, but because maybe, just maybe, it was time for Thomas Parker to see his elder daughter as she truly was. Not a disappointment, not a servant, but a successful woman who had created her own path without his help or recognition. Recognition, the word Catherine Morgan had used that day in her office. Not revenge, but recognition. Perhaps it was time for one. More conversation. The restaurant my father suggested was in Midtown, a power lunch spot where investment bankers and corporate lawyers carved up the financial world between courses. I'd coordinated events there, but never dined as a guest. The maitre d' greeted me by name, not as Thomas Parker's daughter, but as Emily Parker of Aurora Events, and led me to a quiet corner table where my father was, already seated. He stood as I approached, a formality he'd never bothered with at home. Emily, thank you for meeting me. I nodded, taking the chair opposite him. He looked different somehow. Older, less certain. The unflappable Thomas Parker I'd grown up with had always worn his success like armor. Today, there was a vulnerability to him that seemed foreign. I ordered the 15 Bordeaux, he said, gesturing to the wine being poured. You still prefer red, correct? The question startled me. When had he ever noticed my wine preference? Yes, thank you. An awkward silence settled between us as the sommelier retreated. My father cleared his throat. Your office refused to put me directly through to you. Quite professional. Your staff. They're trained to screen calls, especially unexpected ones. He nodded, accepting the implied rebuke. Olivia mentioned she visited you last week. She did. And how did that go? I sipped my wine, considering. Better than expected. She seemed genuinely reflective. She's been quite hard on herself, on all of us, really. He paused. With good reason. I waited, not offering the easy absolution he might be seeking. Thomas Parker had never been a man to apologize directly. Even now he was circling the subject, approaching it obliquely. Your company, he said finally. It's quite impressive. The financials, the client list, the growth trajectory. You've built something remarkable, Emily. Yes, I have. Without any help from me. I met his gaze steadily. Yes. He nodded slowly, seeming to absorb this. That contract with Morgan Enterprises, it's significant. Catherine Morgan is not easily impressed. I'm aware. She's turned down Parker Investments 3 years running. A faint smile touched his lips. And yet she signed with you immediately. That speaks volumes about your business acumen. Is that why you wanted to meet, Dad? To discuss my business acumen? He looked down at his untouched wine. Partly, I have a proposal I'd like you to consider. A collaboration between Aurora Events and Parker Investments that could benefit us both. Of course. This was the real reason for the meeting. Not reconciliation, but opportunity. The businessman in him couldn't resist the connection to Catherine Morgan, even if it came through the daughter he'd dismissed for years. "I'm not interested in a collaboration," I said, quietly. His eyes snapped up to mine, surprise evident. He'd expected negotiation, not refusal. "You haven't heard the terms." "I don't need to. Aurora Events is doing exceptionally well on its own. We don't need Parker Investments' backing or connections." For a moment, he looked genuinely confused, as if the concept of rejecting a Parker Investments partnership was incomprehensible. Then, something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or simple recognition of reality. "I see." He leaned back slightly. "Well, that's disappointing, but I understand. Your company, your decision." We ordered food, neither of us particularly focused on the menu, and ate in a silence that gradually shifted from tense to thoughtful. As the plates were cleared, my father set down his napkin with deliberate care. "There's another reason I wanted to meet," he said, his voice different now, less the confident executive, more the uncertain father. "I owe you an apology, Emily, a substantial one." I stilled, my wine glass halfway to my lips. "The way I treated you over the years was inexcusable, dismissing your career, your choices, your capabilities." He met my gaze directly. "I failed you, as a father, repeatedly and profoundly." The words hung between us, unexpected and raw. I'd imagined this moment so many times. The acknowledgement, the apology. But now that it was happening, I found myself unsure how to respond. "Why now?" I asked finally. "Because you've seen my company's success? Because Catherine Morgan respects me? Would you be sitting here if I'd failed?" He flinched at the questions but didn't look away. "Those are fair points. I'd like to say I would have reached this realization regardless, but..." He shook his head. "The truth is, seeing you that night at the Pierre, confident, accomplished, respected by people I've been trying to impress for years, it forced me to confront how wrong I've been. About everything. And Mom? Has she had a similar epiphany?" A shadow crossed his face. "Patricia is struggling. Her entire identity has been built around being the perfect Parker matriarch, with the perfect Parker daughter, Olivia, following in her footsteps. Learning that her other daughter has succeeded so dramatically in a world Patricia doesn't control or even understand. It's shaken her foundation. You make it sound like my success is somehow a punishment for her. No, not a punishment. A revelation. One she's not yet ready to face." He hesitated. "She refused to come today. Said she couldn't bear the humiliation." I nodded, unsurprised. "And Olivia? Olivia is doing what Olivia rarely does. Reflecting. On her behavior, on her assumptions. She admires you, you know, now that she sees who you really are. I've always been who I really... Dad, you all just refuse to see it." He absorbed this, then nodded slowly. "Yes, that's precisely it." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. I'm not even asking for another chance. I just wanted you to know that I recognize what I've done, what we've all done, and I am profoundly sorry for it." I studied him, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. I found none, just an aging man facing the consequences of years of blindness. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "It matters, even now." Relief flickered across his face. Would you consider coming to dinner sometime? At the house? Not as the help, obviously, but as our daughter. Our successful, independent daughter." The invitation hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to refuse, to maintain the clean break I'd made, but another part, the part that had always, despite everything, craved my family's recognition, considered the possibility of a new beginning. "I'll think about it," I said, neither accepting nor rejecting outright. He nodded, understanding the boundary. "That's all I can ask." As we left the restaurant, standing on the busy midtown sidewalk, my father turned to me with an expression I'd rarely seen: uncertainty. "You've built something extraordinary, Emily. Not just your company, but yourself. The woman you've become despite us, not because of us." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, every day, but I'm saying it now, for whatever it's worth." As he walked away, disappearing into the stream of New Yorkers rushing through their day, I stood still, letting his words settle. They didn't erase the past. They didn't heal all wounds. But they were a beginning, a small crack in the wall that had separated me from my family for so long. I pulled out my phone and texted Zoe. Meeting done, heading back to the office. Her response was immediate. How was it? I considered the complex tangle of emotions the lunch had stirred. Unexpectedly honest, I typed back. I'll tell you later. Then I stepped into the flow of the city, my city, and headed back to the world I'd built for myself, one careful brick at a time. Spring came to New York in a rush of cherry blossoms and sudden warmth. Aurora events had expanded again. New offices, 6 car, additional staff members, a waiting list of clients drawn by the success of our Morgan Enterprises events. I'd hired an executive assistant, delegated more responsibilities to Zoe and Marco, and found myself, for the first time, with occasional free weekends. On one such Saturday in April, I sat at a cafe in Brooklyn Heights, watching sunlight dance on the East River. My phone buzzed with a text. From Olivia. Are you free for coffee today? I'm in your neighborhood. Over the past 3 months, Olivia and I had begun a tentative rebuilding. Not the close sisterhood we'd never had, but something new. A relationship between equals, built on cautious honesty. We'd met for lunch twice, exchanged occasional texts. Each interaction carried less tension than the last. I texted back an invitation to join me at the cafe. 20 minutes later, she appeared, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse. Another change. The old Olivia would never have been seen in public without full makeup and designer labels. This place is charming, she said, sliding into the chair opposite mine. Great view. It's my weekend spot. Good coffee, no pressure. She smiled, seeming genuinely relaxed. How are the Morgan events going? Smoothly. We just finalized plans for their summer gala in the Hamptons. I saw the coverage of their spring fundraiser in the Times. The floating garden concept was incredible. I nodded, accepting both the compliment and the fact that my sister now read event coverage in the lifestyle section. How's your PR firm doing? Good. Different. She stirred her coffee. Thoughtfully. I've been shifting our focus. Less socialite stuff, more substance, working with some environmental nonprofits, educational foundations. That's quite a change. She met my gaze directly. I've been reevaluating a lot of things lately. Priorities, values, the kind of work that actually matters. The honesty in her voice was striking. The Olivia I'd grown up with had cared primarily about appearances, connections, climbing social ladders. This new self-awareness seemed genuine. I've been seeing someone, she added, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. A professor at Columbia, environmental science. He's nothing like anyone I've dated before. Smart, thoughtful, completely unimpressed by the Parker name or Scarsdale connections. I smiled. He sounds good for you. He is. She hesitated. He wants to meet my family. All of my family. The implication hung between us. Including me? Especially you, actually. He's read about Aurora events. Says your sustainable event practices are impressive. She laughed softly. I think he's more excited to meet you than Mom and Dad. How are they? I asked. The question less loaded than it would have been months ago. Olivia's eye expression grew thoughtful. Dad's different, quieter, more reflective. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs at NYU, women primarily. I think he's trying to atone in his way. And Mom? Mom is, she sighed, still struggling. She's lost status in her social circle. The Christmas Eve disaster became quite the Scarsdale legend, apparently. But she's seeing a therapist, which is unprecedented. Baby steps. I nodded, unsurprised. Patricia Parker's identity had always been constructed around perfection and control. Having that facade shattered so publicly would require a fundamental rebuilding. She asks about you, Olivia added. Not directly, but I can tell she's listening when I mention our meetings. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching a ferry cut through the sparkling water. They're selling the house, Olivia said suddenly. The Scarsdale estate. It's too big, Dad says, now that I've moved out. But I think it's more than that. Too many ghosts, too many performances of the perfect family. The news hit me with unexpected force. That house, with all its painful memories, all its coldness, had still been the backdrop of my childhood. Its absence would mark the final transformation of the Parkers. They've bought a smaller place in Manhattan, Olivia continued. Upper West Side, Mom's redecorating, but differently. Warmer colors, more comfortable furniture, less showcasing. I tried to picture Patricia Parker choosing comfort over impression and couldn't quite manage it. But people could change. I had. Maybe she could too. There's going to be a family dinner next Sunday, Olivia said, watching me carefully. At the new place. Dad asked me to invite you. She rushed on before I could respond. It's not a command performance or anything. Just dinner. James, my professor, will be there too, so you'd have someone else to talk to if it gets awkward. The invitation hung between us. 3 months ago, I would have refused. Outright. Now, I wasn't so sure. I'll think about it, I said. Olivia nodded, accepting the boundary. That's all any of us can ask. Later that afternoon, I walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, needing movement to process my thoughts. The bridge had always been my thinking place, suspended between boroughs, between worlds, much like I felt now, between my past as the invisible Parker daughter and my present as Emily of Aurora Events. The spires of Manhattan gleamed ahead of me, while Brooklyn sprawled behind, both mine now, in different ways. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Emily, the summer gala details are perfect. You continue to exceed expectations. Dinner next week to discuss the fall lineup? I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Catherine had become more than a client, something of a mentor, even a friend. She understood what it meant to build something from nothing, to be underestimated, and then prove everyone wrong. As I reached the middle of the bridge, I stopped to look out over the water. Below me, the East River flowed, powerful and constant, while above, seagulls wheeled in the clear spring sky. I thought about family, the one I was born into and the one I'd created for myself. I thought about forgiveness, not as an erasing of the past, but as a possible path forward. I took out my phone and texted Olivia. What time on Sunday? Her response came immediately. 6:30, casual, just be yourself. Be myself. For so long, that had been impossible within the Parker family. Perhaps now it could be different. The next Sunday, I stood outside a handsome brownstone on West 78th Street, a bottle of wine in hand. Through the window, I could see movement. My father setting a table, a bearded man who must be James gesturing animatedly, Olivia laughing at something he'd said. No sign of my mother yet. I hesitated, one foot on the bottom step. This wasn't forgetting. This wasn't pretending the years of dismissal and invisibility hadn't happened. This was choosing to see if something new could grow in soil that had once been barren. Before I could overthink it further, the door opened. My father stood there, surprise and then genuine pleasure crossing his face. Emily, you came. I did. He stepped back, holding the door wide. We're glad. Very glad. I took a deep breath and climbed the steps toward whatever came next. 1 year after the Christmas Eve that changed everything, I stood in my expanded Brooklyn offices, watching snow fall gently outside the windows. Aurora Events now occupied 2 floors, employed 32 people, and had a client list that read like a who's who of New York's corporate elite. We'd been featured in Forbes, nominated for industry awards, recognized for our innovative, sustainable event practices. But success wasn't the only transformation the year had brought. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Still on for Christmas Eve dinner? James is making his famous lasagna. I smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it. I'm bringing tiramisu. The past year had seen a slow, sometimes awkward, but ultimately genuine rebuilding of connections with my family. Not a return to the old dynamics. Those were gone forever. But the careful construction of something new, something healthier. Olivia and James had married in a small ceremony in October, an intimate gathering in the botanical gardens with just 40 guests. I'd planned it, of course, weaving sustainable practices with elegant touches that reflected the couple's values. My mother had actually thanked me afterward, the words coming stiffly but sincerely. It was beautiful, Emily, she'd said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. You have a gift. Small steps, difficult ones sometimes. My relationship with Patricia remained the most tentative, too many years of criticism and dismissal to be easily overcome, but she was trying, in her way. The therapy was helping. So was the volunteer work she'd begun at a women's shelter, something none of us had seen coming. My father had retired from Parker Investments, passing leadership to his longtime deputy. He now taught business courses at NYU with a special focus on women entrepreneurs. He'd asked me to guest lecture once, a request that had brought tears to my eyes, though I'd managed to hide them until after our call ended. The intercom on my desk buzzed. Emily, your 3 o'clock is Here. Send her in, please. The door opened, and Catherine Morgan walked in, elegant as always in a perfectly tailored suit. She smiled warmly. Emily, the offices look wonderful. The expansion suits you. Thank you. We needed the space. We settled into the comfortable seating area by the windows, where coffee and pastries waited. After 2 years of working together, our meetings had evolved into a comfortable rhythm. The New Year's reception plans are finalized, I said, passing her a folder. We've incorporated all your suggestions about the lighting and the interactive elements. She nodded approvingly as she scanned the documents. Perfect, as always. She set the folder aside and fixed me with her keen gaze. And how are things on the personal front? Still finding your way with, the family? I smiled. Catherine had become something of a confidant over the past year, offering occasional advice drawn from her own complicated family history. Better, different. We're learning new ways to relate to each other. And your mother? Still Patricia Parker, but softer around the edges. We had lunch last month, just the two of us. First time ever. It was awkward, but not terrible. Progress. Catherine nodded approvingly. And the big news? Have you told them yet? My hand went instinctively to my midsection, where the first tiny swell of pregnancy was just becoming visible. Sunday dinner, this weekend. They'll be thrilled. I think so. Now. I smiled, thinking of how different this news would have been received in the old days. Olivia's already planning to spoil her niece or nephew shamelessly. Catherine's eyes softened. You've built quite a life for yourself, Emily. Professionally and personally. I have. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know why I pushed so hard for that New Year's reception last year? Why I insisted your family be there? I assumed you wanted to help me step out of the shadows. Partly, she smiled. But mostly, I saw in you what someone saw in me 30 years ago. Extraordinary talent being diminished by people who should have nurtured it. Sometimes we need a dramatic moment of recognition to fully claim our power. She paused. I never told you this, but the night of that Christmas Eve disaster when I realized who you were, or rather, who your family didn't know you were, I wasn't just surprised. I was angry on your behalf. Is that why you mentioned knowing me professionally? To expose the situation? Of course. Her smile turned slightly mischievous. I didn't build a billion-dollar company without learning when to play a strategic card. Your family needed a wake-up call. You needed witnesses to your true self. I laughed softly. Well, it worked. Spectacularly. She glanced at her watch. I should go. Board meeting at 4. She stood gathering her coat. Will you bring David to the New Year's reception? I'd like to see the man who's finally worthy of Emily Parker. I smiled, thinking of my husband of 6 months. A kind, brilliant architect I'd met while planning an event at one of his buildings. He wouldn't miss it. He's still slightly intimidated by you, by the way. As he should be. She winked. Good men usually are. After Catherine left, I walked to the windows, watching the snow transform the city. 1 floor below, my team was busy finalizing holiday events, creating beauty and meaning for clients who valued their work. Across the bridge, a new family dynamic was taking shape. Imperfect but real, with space for all of us to be seen as we truly were. And here, in this moment, I stood fully in my own light. Not invisible, not diminished, not defined by others' limitations. Just Emily Parker, CEO, friend, sister, daughter, wife, soon-to-be mother, whole and seen. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Heading home early. Thinking pasta for dinner? Love you. I smiled, texting back a quick affirmation. Then I gathered my things and prepared to leave the office, entrusting the afternoon's work to my capable team. As I rode the elevator down, I thought about the journey of the past year, not just the professional successes, but the deeper transformations. I'd learned that true dignity isn't found in revenge or even in public vindication. It's found in knowing your own worth so completely that others' recognition, while welcome, isn't necessary for your peace. It's found in the grace to allow relationships to transform rather than demanding they be perfect. It's found in building a life that reflects your values rather than others' expectations. Outside, the snow was falling harder, Brooklyn transforming into a winter wonderland. I pulled my coat tighter and stepped into the gentle storm, each snowflake unique and perfectly visible against the darkening sky. My mother had called yesterday, still a rare enough occurrence to be notable. Emily, she'd said, her voice different than I'd ever heard it. Humbler, more hesitant. I've been thinking about Christmas Eve, last year and the year before. I'd waited, not filling the silence. I want you to know, she'd continued carefully, that I see you now. Who you really are. I should have seen you all along. A pause then. I'm trying to be better, to see more clearly. I know, Mom, I'd said, and meant it. I see you trying. And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift of the past year. Not just being seen, but learning to truly see others. To recognize that beneath my mother's rigid perfectionism lay deep insecurities. That my father's dismissal had stemmed from his own narrow definition of success. That Olivia's privilege had blinded rather than benefited her. Understanding didn't erase the hurt, but it created space for something new to grow. As I walked home through the snow-hushed streets, I thought about the Christmas Eve dinner ahead, so different from the disaster of 2 years ago. No performances, no servitude, no invisible daughter. Just family, imperfect but trying. And me, finally and completely visible. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from my father. Looking forward to Sunday dinner. Your mother's making apple pie. Your favorite, right? I smiled. He was trying too in his way. Remembering small details, creating new connections. Yes, I typed back. My favorite. Then I slipped my phone into my pocket and continued home. Where David waited. Where warmth and acceptance were not things I had to earn, but simply what I deserved. The snow fell softly around me, each flake catching the light before joining the glistening blanket that covered the city. Separate, beautiful, and utterly unique. Just like each of us, when finally seen.